And welcome to this week's episode of Esports Wrap. I'm your host, Michael Amargon, and with us this week, we're going to be talking about, I'm going to be talking about, and if you're watching, feel free to comment and, post in chat, or if you're, listening via podcast, I guess just listen. But this week, we're going to be talking about microtransactions, but more specifically, loot boxes and where they came from. Now, loot boxes are a very heavily contested and controversial topic these past few weeks, mainly for the fact that there are a few games out there by the name of Destiny 2 and Star Wars Battlefront 2. Now, these games have had some issues with their loot box systems. Of course, they may call them slightly different. In terms of Battlefront, they're called lootcrates, and with Destiny 2, they are called engrams, bright engrams. But those are the more recent ones, and then people have had issues with loot crates, loot boxes, or however you want to call them, for some time now. But where did it all begin? Well, let's take a look at the premise behind what is a loot box. A loot box is essentially something that you pay money for, or you get via in-game, via some kind of method. The controversial part of it is because you're spending real money to get these items. So you get this item, and then it has, say, 10 different items inside of it that you could possibly get. It's a random item generator, a rig. Now this rig essentially has 10 items in this theoretical example, and you can only get one out of the 10. It can be one that you've already gotten before. It can be one that you really wanted, or one that you really didn't want, and that is, most people would typically say, sucks. It's completely random. And so when you place in the money aspect of it, then you have to deal with the consequences of that, and the fact that you may have spent real world money to get items that you really didn't want. And what's one of the real items in the real world that really is similar to that? It's the pachinko. So you might be wondering, what the heck is pachinko? Okay. So, pachinko essentially is a mechanical game where you would go inside, and it originates from Japan, so that's the motherland of games. And it's actually really well known over there as being something that you typically don't want to get too hooked into. Let's see if I could find a good one. Essentially, there are different mechanisms behind it. So I'm reading from Wikipedia for pachinko here. To play pachinko, sorry, I'm still a little bit sick. Players get a number of metal balls by inserting cash or credit or cards directly into a machine that they want to use. These balls are then shot into a machine, usually via pulling on a lever once for each launch from a ball tray. These balls then fall vertically through an array of pins, levers, cups, traps, and various obstacles until they reach the bottom of the machine screen. Now, the player has a chance to get more balls to play if one of the launch balls hit a certain place during the fall through the pachinko machine. Sounds a lot like pinball right now, doesn't it? But having more balls is considered a benefit, and see, here's where it comes. Because it allows the player to remain in the game longer and ultimately have a larger winning chance. Newer machines have digital slot machines in the large screen of the center of the system. The objective of this part is to get 3 numbers or symbols in a row for a jackpot. So hold on 1 second. Okay, so essentially a lot of people took that kind of idea of, you know, the more kind of things you have, the more it gives you as a experience. So it's a sensory experience that's specifically designed to entice your attention and whet your appetite. Now, the whole thing about the pachinko is that, yes, you spend more money to get a bet higher chance, to get the items that you want, and it's a whole light show kind of thing that's going on and making a bunch of noise and song and dance kind of thing. Now, essentially that's kind of what's happening with this loot box, and they really do make a big show out of it when it comes to Battlefront 2. Quite literally, you've got a crate that falls down, it opens up, these discs come spinning out, and then they start to open. Sorry, but it kind of came from before that, and these loot crates didn't quite start off in mainstream games or even on the PC. They started off in mobile games, and games like where you would go and buy, I mean, one more recent version is like Final Fantasy Brave Frontier, where you quite literally have to either spend money or level up in the game to get crystal or whatever it is to then unlock heroes. And the hero that you get is completely random, and there are quite literally hundreds of them that you can unlock. And you have a slight chance of getting a rare one. So what's happening is that this started off with mobile gaming and it became really, really popular. And it became a legitimate source of income for gaming. So when it moved over from, you know, let's do it on arcade style, like pinball machines, essentially. Then it moved into mobile games in Japan, which then came into mobile games in the US and the rest of the world. And then it became really highly popularized across the world now, since it was already popularized in Japan. Now you've got it coming over into major games, which are then started off with microtransactions, where you would purchase different unlocks for your game and stuff like that. And then it became, you get your loot box. Forget the microtransactions. I mean, there are still some games that will keep the microtransactions, but for the most part, you're finding a lot of them switching over to these loot boxes where you can not really pick what you get off the bat. Sure, you may have some options, like with Blizzard's games like Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm and stuff like that, where you can use the loot crate. It will give you credits if you get a duplicate, or if you decide to dismember something, then you could use that to then buy the item that you really want. Actually, now I think about it, neither of those games allow you to dismember stuff. That's more Hearthstone. But that's kind of the point. That's what they're trying to really go after. Random generated items that you don't necessarily be able to go for. So it, in a very good sense, It's also very similar to packs of cards, trading cards, which, you know, Magic of the Gathering, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, things like that, where you would open a pack and it's completely randomized. You have almost little chance of actually knowing exactly what's going to be in it unless it's specifically stated, you know, this card will be in there. So it's kind of something that we've brought on to ourselves when you really take a look at it, because we allowed it to happen, and by becoming entranced with it with the mobile games, allowing it to continuously happen on our major A+ games on the PC and like our console systems. So what are we really saying to them? We're saying, hey, we enjoy this, give us our money. And now that they're being blatant about it, it's like, hold on, we don't want to. So I will admit, it is a little weird that we have accepted it to this point, and now we're saying hold the brakes. So for example, here's 7 major titles that actually use loot boxes as of like this year. Middle Earth Shadow of War, Mass Effect Andromeda, Injustice 2, Lawbreakers, Forza Motorsport 7, For Honor, of course the Star Wars Battlefront 2, Destiny 2, which of course I mentioned, and FIFA 2018, or FIFA 18, with their card packs, which again is very similar to the whole thing. Now that's severing completely different genres of games, and typically the games that we would have found having this kind of thing on mobile are fighting games or games that have you capturing different monsters or whatnot like that to then fight. So essentially, yeah, it's almost always has something to do with fighting, getting a better upgrade, power leveling, that kind of thing. And so now people were trying to get it listed as, you know, this is a gambling issue because you've got people spending real world money to get items that they may not want or may not need, and so it's a matter of risk, which is essentially, when you break down gambling, what they're trying to say that is, you're not guaranteed a particular thing, so that is a gamble that you're spending on this item to get another item. Well, the UK's gaming commission essentially said that they can't do anything about it because it doesn't have any physical, tangible aspect to it. Which might become a continuous problem until something changes, or it might never change. It might simply be that it's not considered gambling because no one wants to take that on in the digital realm. So we're not, it's really in a situation where we've kind of we're chasing our tail and now we've bit it. And now we're crying. So I really am hoping that at some point it'll become better. I can't promise it. Yeah, Monkey's Paw. I've heard something similar to it, Omega. Essentially that. Crap. Monkey's Paw, Rabbit Foot. Okay, no, that's good luck stuff. Actually, let me look it up really quick. So okay. So it's a short story involving Mr. and Mrs. White and their adult son, Herbert. Sergeant Major Morris, a friend who served in the British Army in India, introduces them to a mummified monkey's paw. An old fakir placed a spell on the paw that would grant 3 wishes. The wishes are granted, but always with hellish consequences as punishment for tampering with fate. So very much like a genie. Morris, having had a horrific experience using the paw, throws the monkey paw into the fire, but Mr. White retrieves it. Before leaving, Morris warns Mr. White that if he does use the paw, then it will be on his own head. At Herbert's suggestion, Mr. White flippantly wishes for 200 pounds, which will enable him to make the final mortgage payment for the house. Even though he believes he has everything he wants, the next day as Herbert leaves for work at a local factory. Later that day, word comes to the White House home that Herbert has been killed in a terrible machine accident. Although the employer denies responsibility for the incident, the firm has decided to make a goodwill payment to the family of the deceased. Oh my lord. The payment of 200 pounds exactly matches the amount Herbert suggested his father should wish for. 10 days after their son's death and a week after the funeral, Mrs. White, almost mad with grief, asks her husband to use the paw to wish Herbert back to life. Oh, that's not going to be good. Reluctantly, he does so. Shortly afterward, there is a knock at the door, and Mrs. White fumbles at the lock in an attempt to open the door. Mr. White, who had to identify his son's mutated body and who knows the corpse has been buried for more than a week, realizes that the thing outside is not the son he knew and loved, and makes a third wish. The knocking suddenly stops. Mrs. White opens the front door and finds no one is there. So there is... They wasted their wishes, which is very similar to the genie type stories. That, yeah, it's like exactly, you have to be careful what you wish for, and even if you wish very carefully, it still may not end up exactly what you hope for. And I mean, in this element, that's exactly what it is. We wanted these things, we accepted them into what we these games that we hyped up and played with such ferocity, and here we are now. We're saying, oh my gosh, it's too much, and now we're asking for a bailout and trying to ram these companies, saying, hey, this is too much, so on and so forth. Which, don't get me wrong, I do think too much is too much. There is such a thing as too much. But we also have to take a look at ourselves and saying, we did also enable this. Up to this point, we did. And, you know, unless the industry comes up with something better and we support that better thing, then we can't really expect for things to get better. Either way, there's a narrow argument to be made in favor of increased monetization for certain types of video games. So a lot of games are going the way of games as a service, like Destiny 2, Overwatch, and so on, and now Battlefront 2, which they're saying is a service, where they're continuously offering new updates to the games, and they're fleshing out new things to keep it vibrant and exciting for their players. But then again, there's also the fact that, you know, you have to make sure that you're not pushing out a game with the expectation that, hey, we're going to bring these 2 expansions out later on, and then, you know, people feel like it's a half-baked game. That's another thing that we've been doing, and that kind of touches on the whole pre-ordering thing. But that's a whole nother issue within itself. So all I can really say, and to end this off, we have to be very careful with the types of things that we condone in our games. This has been a system, a technique that has been around for decades to lure us in, to get us to spend more money. Quite literally, pachinko has ruined families. in Japan. That's how bad the gambling aspect of it is. And then it brings it over into mobile games. But literally, there was a celebrity just a few weeks ago that said his son playing a mobile game spent over $3,000 buying stuff so he could fight inside this game and get the better characters. That's a whole lot of money. And now that I remember who it was Jack Black's kid. We need to be careful with this. Seriously, if not just us, our kids, because these games are targeting kids as well. Yeah. WTF. Exactly. So, yeah, they can be guilty little pleasures for adults who actually spend the money. But if you have kids that play this, lock down your games. Lock down your accounts so they can't buy and spend a whole bunch of money. You don't need your kids getting into gambling issues. You don't need to be getting into gambling issues in a game. So, overall, be careful. Mind the things that you allow in your games. Speak up about them before they get to a point like now, where you quite literally have to have government committees to try and fight and take a look into these things to protect you from yourself and from these companies that are essentially giving you what you wanted. Yeah, they may seem like cash grabs, but that's what they are. They're both cash grabs, and they're going along with what they think you want. You know, that's the whole thing behind marketing and selling stuff. Supply and demand. You supply what people demand. So in a sense, yeah, this has been a PSA, a public service announcement brought to you by the MOAR Cookies Foundation. So, yeah. I'm going to end my stream here. I've been your host, Michael Amorgan. And thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. And I hope this goes a long way into helping break the current cycle. We need to break this cycle. We need a new system. If anything, we need to go back to the old systems of perhaps just full-fledged games, not games as a service, or if games as a service, be willing to go subscription-based or allow for really good microtransactions. Not loot boxes, but microtransactions that help build you up to where you want to be in the game. And even that, you need to be careful of. But yeah, until next time, take care. Don't forget, I'm back next week on Esports Wrap, Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Tech Talk is coming up this Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. Take care.